the data set I'm going to use as a tutorial. So the data is still customer data, but it's customers of a specific restaurant. Okay, so the business conduct a survey and try to understand who are their customers. Right. So what's the customer preference in terms of the healthy benefits of the food? So whether they eat a lot out, so and also with certain demographic information like age, gender, household income. Right. So given this data set, we can do cluster analysis. So cluster analysis basically want to group similar customer in the same group, right? And there's a distinct difference between groups. So in that case, business can treat different group, differently. So it's kind of provide a differentiated service or product to different group of customers. For example, when a business design brochure or catalogs, so they may consider customer, genders like male customer or female customer. So they may consider different cover, different color, or different content for male customer and the female customer. And also, a lot of business will focus on to discover the value and the lifestyle of the customers. So then when we consider lifestyle or value, and then that is not exactly follow certain demographic attributes. So regardless of your age, gender, education, so on and so, you may have the same value or lifestyle with others, and which has totally different, background. So in that case, and those attributes, in marketing, we call it the latent attributes, the hidden attributes, because that's not something and we can see and from the customer, right? So for example, if you have a physical store like a Macy's, and you have camera and you can record, the traffic of your business, and then you can see your customers and see, what's the age distribution, what's the gender distribution of your customers. But the inside, the latent value or lifestyle or preference, it's not able to observe, right? So those is latent attributes, but those latent attributes actually determined the customer purchase decision. Right? For example, I purchase a product, no matter it's Apple or Samsung or a specific car. So not just because I'm male, based on my age, my education, my position, it's more because my lifestyle, the value I hold. So those actually decide what kind of products I purchase and what kind of product I like. So in marketing, and the only way you can get this kind of information is through survey or questionnaire or focus group. Right? You need people tell you their value, belief, preference, lifestyle. Right? Of course, nowadays everybody know, and people also can get it from social media. Right? So that's why with social media, social network, and we somehow get addicted to certain product service. For example, TikTok or Instagram. And you can get really addicted to type of video. And the network, the social media platform, and analyze your behavior and get some information about your preference, your lifestyle, or your value, your belief, even political preference, and then just bombard you with a similar product service. So that's why when I use my TikTok or Instagram, I will see, or even YouTube videos, I will see, gradually, and I have really products they will see from customer, from business perspective, will see fit my preference or interest, but somehow and can be really biased, right? Go to the extreme and won't be explored and something out of my interest or out of my opinion or belief. So that's a certain problem with the social media, social network. But the concept or strategy of those business actually just try to understand and your preference and your belief and your value, and then they can just sell you everything and fits your belief value. For example, if you know a person's value or belief or lifestyle, you not just search one thing, say certain luxury clothing, shoes, sneakers, right? they can sell everything: luxury watch, luxury vacation package, luxury handbags, right? So that's why. So those can be the dream of marketing executives or professionals. They want to understand your value, the belief. But those, if not be able, try to detect from your social network or social media behavior, which you disclose by yourself voluntarily, and just showing the item you like, and post something, say, I really enjoy certain things, right? Or you disclose your value, opinion, certain time, even political, opinion, attitude on social network. And then those information collect from business and, to their, it's like a treasure box, right, to business. And then they can think what kind of product can target you and bombard you. But if you don't disclose everything on social networks and business, how to conduct actually very expensive marketing, survey or questionnaire, try to collect the information. Right? So for example, here, so when the restaurant wants to know who are my target customer, what kind of customer really like my service or product, so they need to conduct a questionnaire, a survey, and ask them, so what's their belief, what's their preference, right? So for example, something here, and you can see our latent variables or factors. So for example, certain is regarding personality. Here, I tend to plan things very carefully, right? So it's a personality. So whether the customer is kind of impulsive customer, right? So, and I sometimes have trouble control my spending. So this is, and also we have people think, so it's very important and to purchase product, I think it's that are made locally, right? And here I carefully consider the health benefits of food. Okay? So that's certain preference. So the preference, the value, the weight they put on the health benefits of food. Right? So they also certain thing like frequency. Right? How many times you eat, eat in restaurant last week, right? So those information you can only get from survey, and you won't be able to observe. Right? For others, for age and gender and household income, and those things actually, and to business is easy to get because this allows available data, and they can get from maybe a bank, maybe some marketing firm, from the credit union, and those information they can purchase, right? And also when you sign up for any business, and somehow they will ask you location, age, gender, so and so, and sometimes household income, salary, and if you tell the truth, and they have information available. Right? So then, given most decision is made based on your value, your preference. So that's why when we consider customer segmentation and using the variable to conduct a cluster analysis, and actually we should use those latent variable, okay? Because those are variable really determined customer purchase, not those, okay? Not age, gender, household income. So that's a somehow, but the more important thing is their belief. Okay? So once you can create a cluster with those latent variable which determined their purchase, and then you can use those variable, I would say the variable you can observe and age, gender, and to identify the customers or potential customer in each cluster. Yeah, it looks like everything is fine. So I'm going just to import. So here you click analyze. Yeah, let's look at the data first. So in GMP, you can get some statistic or visualization of each variable. So to have visualization, you click this histogram, and you can see, so current customer, not current customer, 1 or 0. And there's a distribution of, I tend to plan things very carefully. And here you can see, most people will answer, I think this is a 4 and then 5, okay? Here we have age group. So that's a distribution of a different age group. And this household income, 3 levels, right? So when you click one of categorical variable, and then that serves as a filter. For example, let's look at the current customer. So I'll click 1. So with 1, you can see, so for customer value equal to 1, so here is the distribution of those variables, right? So you can see the age group, so the highlight, the bar chart, right? And over here, and you can get some statistics. So that can be useful when you work on your assignment. I will require you to have certain statistics and put in a table to summarize data. So you should have like a number of observation, the mean, standard deviation, right? So those you can just copy paste. Okay. So if you want more, and of course you need to get like a range if you want to present. But for numerical variables, normally, and it's mean and standard deviation. And for categorical variable, and make sure you need to show frequency, right? So if this is assignment data, and you shouldn't just present the statistics and showing, for customer, and the mean is 1. No, the customer, so mean is 0.57. Standard deviation is 0.50. And you won't get credit from this report because this is a categorical variable. So for categorical variable, actually, you need to report the frequencies, right? So how many people, respond, and actually it's current customer, and how many it's not, right? So look at your assignment data set and decide. So whether it's called categorical variable or numerical variable. So numerical variable, you need to report mean, standard deviation. And if it's categorical variable, you should report frequency. So click Analyze Clustering. Let's first try the hierarchical cluster. So hierarchical cluster is we have the group of customer. So we can say, let's start with gender. And then we have 2 groups, male, female. And then we shall go to next level. Let's see age group. And within each gender group, and we have, here we should have 4 groups, age group 1, 2, 3, 4. So then 2 times 4, and we have 8 clusters. And then moving forward with household income, 3 levels. And then for that's 8 and times 3, and then you can see we have 24 clusters. So that's a hierarchical cluster. It can be useful sometime, and if and that's the way, and you can classify the data, no matter it's customer or just observations. Okay, so let's try that first. So hierarchical cluster, and I'm going to just put gender, age group, household. Okay, and then I can just click OK, and I get this cluster analysis result. So here you see this is small diamond, and when I click, and it's showing 17. So that's indicate at this level, and there's 17 clusters. So if I move here, we are going to have 8 cluster. Move here, 4 cluster, 3 clusters. For latent variable, and we are going to use another method called k-means. So which is to calculate the value of each variable, and then calculates the distance and from a centered, centered data point, and then calculate the mean, the average, and try to minimize the mean of each observation and its distance to the center of each cluster. So I have the video posted on Canvas, so you can view the video and to get some understanding of the k-mean clustering. Okay? So here, let's click the k-mean clusters. And this time, I'm going to use the latent variables. So I will choose, I tend to plan things very carefully. So that's one personality. I will see the value. I carefully consider the benefits what I eat as another one. And I'm going to choose another one. So let's see. Okay, this one. So important to have food made locally. So I have 3 clusters, right? Not 3 clusters, 3 variables for cluster analysis. First, I will try use 4 clusters, okay? So here, cluster analysis, and you need to tell the algorithm or GMP, so how many clusters you are going to create. So then they will calculate, given the 4 clusters, and each cluster have 1 center. And then depends on the distance of each data point from the center, and the algorithm will assign the data point to different cluster, right? So here we are going to have 4 clusters and 4 centers. So that's my first try. I will try 4 clusters and see the results. So once you change to 4 and you click Go. And here is the result. Okay. So we have the 4 clusters. So let's look at the results of the 4 clusters. So we have 4 cluster 1, 2, 3, 4 over here. Right? So those are the mean calculated of each cluster. Okay. Also, you can see so the size of clusters. So here we have 4 clusters, and most data are assigned to cluster 1. You can see 234 data points and in cluster 1. And cluster 2, 17 data points. Cluster 3, 48. Cluster 4, 42. Right? So most are assigned to cluster 1. So here, let's see what about the cluster 1. And probably here we can see for cluster 1 and given so whether plan things very carefully. So it's low, it's a 1.5, right? And also, I carefully consider the health benefits of food is also low. And then let's look at, I think important purchase product are made locally is also compared to other cluster is also low. So if we want to summarize the customer in people in this cluster, and you may see, so people in this cluster not really plan things very carefully, right? So it's people are cluster, the people in this cluster is more impulsive, right? And not really care about the health benefits of the food they eat, and don't think much about whether food are made locally or not. So in that case, I can consider if this is if it's the restaurant is a fast food chain store, right? And they may like this group of customers because they don't plan things carefully and don't consider health benefits of what you eat. Don't think food made locally, so not to have a lot of requirement regarding to food. So that can be potential target customer. Right? But instead, if you think you are going to target some customer, and for example, really like to eat food from local, and then you probably will consider and look at so here, so 4.64, and that's a really high average. Given so the survey answer will be from 1 to 5, right? So whether you think it's important to purchase products that are more made locally, so 1 is less likely and 5 is most likely, right? So those are people most likely consider and important to purchase food are made local. And then so given the 4.6 score, and this group also I think a little bit, moderate level and consider health benefits of it. And then plan things a little bit careful, right? So from each cluster and given the average value of the data points in that cluster, and you can kind of describe or summarize the customer in that cluster, right? So you can consider what if you have questionnaire survey data and present different attributes. So there's always certain thing, and you can, based on the average score of each cluster, and then describe, summarize, and then build a customer profile, right? So the customer profile is aggregate the attributes of customer in that profile, right? So whether it's more likely purchase food from locally, or whether value the health benefits, or really care about environmental, impact, or really sign up and create a societal impact of on local community, right? So those things, and you can summarize your customer and build a customer profile, right? So that's actually it's a function of clustering for customer segmentation. So this also has a standard deviation. Okay? So given the mean, and from the standard deviation, you can see the variance, right? So previously we choose the cluster size 4, so which means we put the data points into 4 groups. So now let's try another way. So this time, and click clustering, and click k-means clusters. And now I select the same variables, and click OK. So here, given number of clusters, so actually I can choose, so the minimum number of clusters, 3, and the large or the range, so I will put 6. So I'm going to try to create the cluster results with 3 clusters, 4 clusters, 5 clusters, and 6 clusters. And then we are going to compare so which number of cluster is optimal. Right? So once you input the range and you click go. And here you can see, so actually, and with the method, so k-mean clusters, number of clusters, 3, 4, 5, 6, and given the evaluation metrics, and they tell you, so which one can be optimal, and this one is optimal. So that means this addressed, and you just use the 3 clusters, right? So the reason we need to choose some optimal number of clusters is if you have a really small number of clusters, say the extreme situation, just 1 cluster, and you are not produce anything, right? So you have 1 group of observations, you produce 1 clusters, you mean you didn't do any, differentiation. And if you have too many clusters, say 100, and then it also doesn't make sense. So each cluster maybe only contain a few data points, and there's not a practical. You use that result to do any marketing campaign or decide certain strategy because it's too low level, too detailed, right? So you want to be able to handle it, to implement your strategy. So that's why you need to have like just right number of clusters and differentiate your customer into different groups. And also it's practical, you can implement strategy. For example, 4 groups or 3 groups or 5 groups, right? Having not 10 or 20. So that is too much. Even big company cannot afford and just have like 100 clusters and treat 100 clusters differently with different product, different marketing campaign, different, marketing strategy. So that is not practical. So here we have number of optimal 3. So here, let's see the 3 clusters. So we have 3 clusters. We have cluster first out 220 data points, and second one 32, and third one 89. Okay, and here is given the mean, given the average of the value of each variable, and you can try to summarize, right? So for example, if I look at the second one, and basically each average it's kind of outperform others, except I tend to plan things carefully. So this one is only a little bit lower than the third cluster 3, right? So, but in general, you can see this cluster outperform others in every score. So people in this cluster tend to plan things very carefully. People in this cluster think important to purchase product made locally. And people in this cluster consider health benefits, what they need, right? And on the opposite side, and if we see these 3, actually it's a little bit harder to differentiate cluster 1 and 3, right? So this is 1.7, this is 1.4, 1.85, 1.74. So those 2 will be lower, and this plan things carefully is a little higher. So we still can tell some story and try to build a different customer profile. But seeing those 2, the difference is not really big. Okay? So then if you look at when cluster number is equal to 6, and we have more clusters, and we have different average, and you probably can see here, and you may have like a distinct group, say cluster 2, and they score everything 5, right? But in that group, you only have 1 cluster, 1 customer, right? 1 data point, and then not really make sense. And whether you want to treat that the customer differently and design a personalized product service, I don't think it's practical, right? So now we know. So optimum number is 3. So now I'm going to do it again, clustering k-mean cluster, and select those variables. And here I just keep 3 and click go, and have those 3 clusters, right? And now I want to assign the cluster number to the data points. You see here, the k means n cluster equal to 3, and there is a menu button. So click this menu button, and one thing you can do is so save clusters, right? So then that will create a new column in your data table, and then so which data points belongs to which cluster. So let's click this one. Now you can see, so on our data table, now I have cluster 1, 2, 3. So that we will use later when we summarize the data, as I said before. So the variable we use for cluster analysis, we use latent variables, right? Reference, value, interest. And then when we want to describe our cluster, and then we want to use those observed variables like age, gender, household income, so the demographic factors. Okay, so I save this and I can use it later. So there's other things you can do. For example, you can do a biplot. Okay, so that's a good visualization of the three clusters. Okay, so here we have certain variables and like plan things carefully, health benefits and so. And you can see given the three cluster and the data points, you can see this, right? So how the data points fall into and each group of values. Okay. So when you have two variables for cluster analysis, and that will be much easier because with a 2-dimension, and you can easily create a chart and put the observation on the chart. So here we have 3 dimensions. So that's why they use a bubble with color. So let's try others. Okay, yeah, let's try biplot 3D. Okay, so it's fancy. Unfortunately, not labeled properly. So I guess this principle 1, 2, 3. So that will be the 3 variable we use, right? And then you probably follow this 3-dimension, and you can try to figure the 3 group, right? So how the observation lay in the different group. So without a label, it's not really easy for us to identify each data points or 3 clusters. Okay, yeah. So this is what I talk about. So if we use the 2-dimension, and we can easily to visualize. So for example, here, and what we can see. So if we have people plan things very carefully, and here the Y will be consider health benefits, right? So then we will know if we go to this point. So that's the people and the data points and consider both very important, right? And given this distribution, and you can see how the 3 cluster and showing. So most people in group 1 and it's here, cluster 2 here, cluster 3 over here. So here on our data table, and we already have the clusters, right? So you can see here, and we have cluster 1, 2, 3. And actually, one quick, easy way you can see. So who are the customers in cluster 1? And you can simply click cluster 1, right? And then over here, and you can see, for example, I want to see in cluster 1, what's about cluster 1's gender? And moving here, I will see it's high percent of in the gender 1. So I'm not sure it's male or female. So 1 or 2, okay? So 1 will be male, another will be female, right? And in terms of age, so they have people in age group 2, 3, and 2 and 3, right? And for household income, and they also in the household income, so 1, 2, right? So that sort of thing. And then let's see cluster 2. So cluster 2, we can see for gender, so it's a small percentage of gender 1, 2, and age group, and mostly in age group 3, okay, and 2 and 3. And household income, and you can see over here, right? So that's one way, and you can easily have a peek of who are the customer in each cluster, and in terms of age, gender, and household income, right? So here, for example, I can just export this data table to Excel. So here's the data, and then I can easily use a pivot table and to summarize data. I have age and gender to group, and then I can use observation and to count the number of observation. So here I have this summary, right? So I have so let's see, my target cluster is cluster 1. So then look at this table, and I can see So within cluster 1, so the majority of the group is here. So gender 1 and the age group 2 and 3. So those may be my target customer.